Talks?
Words. Words are what I'm saying. I'm saying words right now so we can check the microphone words that I'm saying.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Hoth Topics, a podcast about Star Wars. I am a man with a stick. My name is Ian. Joining me this week, as always, is a man with a club, John. Welcome back, John.
That's a weird intro.
Yeah, I know.
Might be one of the strangest.
It's gonna make sense in a second. And joining us this week is a man with a lightsaber, Eric. Eric, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
Our listeners may remember that we had Steve from the San Diego Sabers podcast on a few podcasts ago, and your name came up in that podcast as you are the battle master and fellow founder of the San Diego Sabers.
That's correct, yes. Battlemaster, head teacher, co-founder, and Saber enthusiast.
Yes.
I guess is a good way to add on to that.
Very, very good one indeed.
Yeah.
Our listeners are familiar with San Diego Sabers in terms of what they are and what they do. I say they, I should say we, because
indeed,
at
yes.
this point we're pretty dedicated San Diego Sabers members ourselves.
Yeah, you're part of the group.
A wonderful group it is to be a part of.
Indeed.
But what I thought we'd do today is kind of talk about your experience as the head teacher and kind of your experience with martial arts, with lightsabering, and how you've helped kind of cohese this group together.
For sure. Yeah. Oh man, where to start? Like, could do like a background of me personally, or just like the group, or what are you thinking?
Well, I do have a couple guiding notes here.
Sure.
So you do have a background in many different combat styles and martial arts.
Yes.
So what are those specifically?
Yeah, very specifically bladed weapons, primarily sword play. Everything from fencing to kendo, different types of European sword plays and martial arts. If it's got a blade on it, I've probably used it at some point or another. I have favorites, obviously, but yeah, most swords from around the world, I guess, is a pretty encompassing way and time-saving way to explain that.
And when did this enthusiasm for weapon training and bladed training really start for you?
It started around 2000 when I was about 8 years old. I went to Disneyland, and they had those really dinky, like light-up, telescoping, quote-unquote, lightsabers. Mm-hmm. And I got one of those, and I got like some other light up sword thing, and I went with my cousin, so we each got one, and we would like sword fight together, and it was really fun, and it just made me really happy, and it was just something I really enjoyed doing. And I started like self-training and studying around that time when I was super young, just whatever I could find, but it wasn't until a few years later that I would actually start professionally learning stuff and training under people. But that's kind of where it started. Very nice. Yeah.
One of my first Star Wars memories was my cousin and I getting lightsabers, a green one and a red one.
Nice.
Luke and Vader's from Return of the Jedi.
Nice.
And going down into my grandmother's basement and just whacking it out. And
indeed.
That sounded wrong.
That's an unfortunate phrasing, yeah. But
just fighting with the sabers. No, just fighting with the sabers, and it really felt like we were in the movie because it was dark, and the colors were there. John, did you have any youthful saber experiences?
Just breaking them. They came up with several qualities of the telescoping sabers. Ones that were much thicker, and then ones that were like a super thin plastic, like when Hasbro's Power of the Force line came out.
Yeah.
And those ones would crinkle and shatter, and then you'd have bladed weapons because they were so jagged. And someone's bleeding, and like someone's parents are called, and it's just a whole mess.
Basically fighting with broken wine bottles at that point.
That's half the fun, yeah. You never know.
Like
as per Star Wars.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's no fun until someone gets cut, right?
Indeed.
Yeah. Hot Topics in no way endorses the joke that Ian just said.
One of us does.
I might, however.
So, Eric, when did the idea of starting a lightsaber school strike?
Well, I'd been a part of a few from the mid to late 2000s, and they were really fun, and there was a lot of stuff I learned from them, but they had issues, and they eventually just kind of disbanded. And so after that had happened, I just kind of worked on my own training and trained friends from time to time that were interested and wanted to learn how to do it. But it wasn't until this event down in Seaport Village in downtown San Diego. It was this big gathering of Star Wars and lightsaber enthusiasts in like a big grassy area. And it was just supposed to be like a gathering, but everyone ends up like dueling with each other and fighting and stuff. And I just so happened to meet Robert down there, one of the co-founders of SDS. So I ran into him, and he was actually supposed to fight my friend Harley, but Harley had to tie his shoe, and so I'm like, I know it's really random, and I'm like, I'll fight with you while Harley ties his shoe, and so that's how Robert and I started talking, and he had this idea of wanting to go to a place or meet up and like have an organized like lightsaber training session thing. And apparently he had met Steve on a forum about a week or so earlier talking about the same thing. And so the three of us get into contact, and it's essentially like, okay, well, we should meet up and talk about this, and because this would be really cool. Because they had wanted to do this when they started talking on the forum, but they didn't have anyone to teach. And so then Robert runs into me, and so it's like, okay, the pieces are kind of falling into place here. So we met up at a place called Tea and More about a week or so later. We kind of came up with the name of the school, our core values, I guess, if you will, like a mission statement. And we set a time and a date and a location to meet up, and it just kind of went from there.
Very nice.
Yeah.
You mentioned the lightsaber kind of gathering in Seaport Village. Was that like around a Comic-Con time? I remember that being reported.
Yeah,
or something similar.
That was actually around December of 2015. It was pretty shortly after The Force Awakens came out.
Okay. So you guys kind of got together. You have the teaching experience. Steve has the organizational know-how, and
goodness, yeah,
Robert
he does.
Brought
There's a guy.
Yeah. That's been our joke. We're like, hey, for any like issue that comes up, like, hey, maybe we should talk to Steve. I hear he knows a guy.
Yeah, looking for some plutonium. Oh yeah, Steve. Yes, he knows the guy.
He knows a guy.
Yeah.
And Robert really seemed to have that drive to glue the pieces together.
Yeah, he was
enthusiasm.
Yeah, Robert's the guy. Like whenever we had events somewhere, he was the front man. He was out there. He was talking to the crowds. He was explaining everything, and so
he was really the face of what you guys were putting together.
Yeah, exactly.
Once you had this cohesive unit and this school starting, what was the process of turning your prior experience into a new lightsaber-based combat martial art?
Well, it essentially came down to, as I had mentioned, I was a part of other groups, and they were really cool, and they had a lot of good stuff for me to learn and kind of gain and increase my knowledge base with not just the combat, but like teaching and leadership as well. But there were issues in there that didn't work, and so I saw and learned from those too. So I essentially formulated from my past experiences what worked, like structurally, and what wouldn't work structurally and leadership-wise, and the three of us took that and kind of formed a school, essentially. There's the training aspect of it. We eventually, very shortly thereafter incorporated, our ranking system. There's the knowledge aspect of it, like lore keeping, which we've more recently started implementing into the system as well. And it's just been, we keep our leadership small, and that way there's not too many cooks in the kitchen, I guess.
Yeah.
We're able to come to decisions and agreements very easily. Stuff gets done, and it's just worked out really well doing it that way.
Yeah, definitely. I've noticed in my experience with Sabers, not only is it very easy to talk to the leadership, but you guys tend to always have anything resolved very quickly, or you're able to move through and get things organized very quickly, and that group dynamic is really felt, I think, with the rest of the students, at least in my experience.
Indeed, yeah, that's what we were going for.
Yeah.
We wanted it to feel that way.
So, lightsabers is combat, but it's also, Star Wars.
Yes.
So what how did you become a Star Wars fan? What is the beginning of your Star Wars journey?
That is a great question. So, if I think back, I'm pretty sure my Star Wars fandom journey kind of started around the time that Phantom Menace came out. My dad had just bought and set up this huge home sound system, and we were at probably Walmart, I would assume, and he was looking for movies that we could get and watch that would just sound amazing. And he sees the Phantom Menace on DVD, and he's like, "Oh man, Star Wars is gonna sound great on this." And so he buys the Phantom Menace on DVD, and we go home and watch it, and that was pretty much all it took for me to be like, I love this. This is like my new favorite thing.
Nice.
And then from there, one of my dad's friends or coworkers had the OT on VHS, and so we borrowed that, and I watched all of those like 15 times, and he eventually got it back, but I watched them pretty extensively, and I loved them. And then I remember being in elementary school, and the Attack of the Clones came out, and Revenge of the Sith came out, and I remember everyone like talking about it at school, and if you didn't like Star Wars, you were essentially like spawn of Satan.
Right.
Like there was something clearly wrong with you. And it was super dope. I remember I don't know why I remember this in particular, but I remember going to see the Phantom Menace, Revenge of the Sith with my mom in the theater, and the part where Anakin's just getting lit up, literally.
Yeah.
She's just like, "Oh dear God," because that's Star Wars has its limb amputating moments, but that was the first time we had seen anything like that in Star Wars, and she wasn't expecting it, and I just remember that that was really funny. But anyway, that's kind of where it started.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very nice. Interesting. I love hearing when people are introduced to Star Wars with the prequel trilogy, because there's a lot more of those people out there, and with the whole prequel controversy that lasted through early 2000s up to today, it's only really now starting to come around. If you're like me, realized you were kind of gaslit into believing you didn't like movies that you liked, or
it's true.
People who have always kind of liked them are now finally being able to vocalize that, and we're finding that there's this really big group of people who are like, we began, our journey began with the prequels, and that's why
I've always loved the prequels.
We love them, and it's going to be the same with the sequel trilogy. There are kids out there right now who are going to grow up to be like, this is my Star Wars.
It's true. Yeah. And for every generation or new set of films that come out in any franchise, but especially this one, it's going to be, where did you jump on, like, your point in the franchise? The same thing with like Pokemon, that's been going on forever. Oh yeah. Like, I'm a Gen 1 guy. That's when I started, when it first came out.
Same.
And then you hear someone talk like, "Oh man, I remember Gen 4 was my first game." It's like, oof.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you say same to that, but you accept Pokemon after 151 as being Pokemon.
Okay, John, there's a difference between starting in Gen 1
and being a Gen 1er.
Your weird obsession with not believing that any Pokemon other than the 151 are Pokemon.
You're a Gen 1er.
Just regular
great.
animals.
That's
He's
great.
He's an extreme Gen 1er.
That's funny. I love that.
Only Kanto exists.
Only Kanto.
Game Freak feels the same way recently.
Pokemon Snap #1.
Oh,
number
Pokemon
1.
Snap, yes.
Now Pokemon
gotta get that picture of a Pikachu on a surfboard.
That was a game.
It was a game that existed.
Indeed.
Circling back to Star Wars, do you have a favorite character?
I have a few.
Okay.
Because I feel like there's certain categories.
Sure, I would agree with you on that.
So, my favorite canonical character is Yoda. My favorite non-canon character now is Grandmaster Luke. My favorite Sith changes from time to time, depending on what mood I'm in. I would have really liked to see more of Darth Nihilus, because he was such an interesting concept that just kind of ended really quickly in
he
KOTOR 2.
He kind of stayed in the concept stage.
Yeah, it was like you hear about him throughout the whole game, and you just fight him in like 5 minutes, and okay. But it's like
wait a minute, wasn't this guy like eating planets? Like what?
Yeah, he was like a surface wiper. He would just destroy the entire life off of planets.
Yeah.
He's really interesting to power scale, actually, which is a hobby of mine, power scaling. But like, yeah, Nihilus is really cool. Scion is like the same thing, but he's just really lame because he's essentially immortal, and the only reason he dies in the game is because he didn't care anymore. He just wanted to. It was like, I guess I'm just gonna die now. It's like, all right.
Scion to me was always like, what if we made Darth Vader, but we just didn't put him in a suit?
Yeah, right. Yeah, his body is looking like it's seen better days.
It's looking crunchy.
Yeah, that extra crispy recipe, but. And then, like, the quote-unquote canonical Sith Lords, I mean, Sidious is just, like, what I would interpret as the perfect embodiment or representation of what the dark side and Sith together ideology is supposed to be. Because you can be a Sith, like, biologically, because they used to be a race.
Right.
But, like, when you take that dark side application to it, he's just, like, it's the perfect mesh.
Insidiousness and power and
yeah, just like the cat petting Bond villain bad guy, but he doesn't, he has cronies, but he certainly doesn't need them. He can get it done himself, kind of thing.
One of my favorite lightsaber fights that they've ever done is actually in the Clone Wars, where Sidious just shows up and started smacking around Maul
and Savage. Oh my god, I just watched that the other night again. Dude, it's like, there's no way. They were screwed. As soon as he showed up, you're done.
It was great, because Maul's like, look at all this I've made for you. And he's like, no.
Yeah.
You're my rival now, and now I have to put you down.
Yeah, it's like...
you know how this works.
Yeah, and he just messes around with him the whole time. And he...
Laughing.
Yeah.
The mad cackling during it, it was amazing.
It's so great. And his lightsabers too, like, I love Sidious's lightsabers, because that's a big thing that I look for in a favorite character of mine in Star Wars. His lightsabers are just so unique. There's no other lightsaber similar to it, with the exception of Nihilus's, but it's such a weird shape and size.
I think my favorite thing about his lightsabers in particular is how he applied Electrum to them as a middle finger to the Jedi Order.
Yes. His whole approach to combat is a giant middle finger to the Jedi Order.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't even like fighting with lightsabers. He just does it and is so good at it to spite them. And it's like, get wrecked.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So, how much influence does the story of Star Wars have on your curriculum for your saber teachings?
A lot. And that comes from what I was originally taught about lightsaber stuff about it's 2019. Wow. So almost 15 years ago.
Current year argument.
Yeah. What I was told and learned from my past groups, the past groups I was a part of came from an earlier group that was around before the forms were invented. So what they would do back in the day is get together with brooms and just put like different colored duct tape around them, and those were their lightsabers.
Nice.
But they would practice actual swordplay. And then when the forms came out in the early prequel times and were expanded upon, what they did, because they were experts in their fields of actual swordplay, they would listen to how they were described and look at how they were performed, and would then go, okay, this is most similar to this in real life, therefore, let's see if we can adapt this to real-life swordplay. And that's what they ended up doing. Now, there's a lot of techniques that don't translate over, and there's a lot that do. And so they essentially took the quote-unquote canonical 7 combative lightsaber forms and applied that Star Warsiness to real-life swordplay and vice versa, and created real-life 7 forms of lightsaber combat. And that was translated into the past groups that I was a part of, which I have now brought to this group.
And it definitely shows the real world basis for, those, because when we're sparring and fighting in the group, we're not doing the Revenge of the Sith rave dance thing, that happens in the middle of that fight,
right?
But it still feels like saber combat, but at the same time, it also feels like, yes, I'm actually participating in a martial art. I'm gonna get hit if I don't move. I need to, apply these techniques and treat it like an actual fight, because it is.
Indeed.
Because it's a martial art, and a martial art is as much mental training as it is physical, what sort of lessons from Star Wars do you use in your training and teaching?
So with me particularly, I like to do the whole package when it comes to taking on a student. Like you said, it's not just the physicality; it is the mental training. It's it's real martial training. It's the entire aspect of being a martial artist. And the biggest things I like to, I guess, impart to people that I'm teaching is, the perseverance aspect of it and the patience aspects, big, quote-unquote Jedi Yoda-esque things. Don't try to rush off and do something until you're ready, until you've actually trained in it. Don't think you're too big for your britches, I guess, is another good way to explain that. Just a lot of train, don't forget the basics, keep refining those and build off of it. And it's something that, most people are guilty of, even myself, sometimes I'll forget to train, basics, not very often, but I do from time to time. And it's like, you gotta keep just doing that. You gotta keep refining your skills. And I think that's probably the biggest thing, I would say.
Yeah. John, does that, based on your experience with the group, does that kind of come through, those sort of like connections with, kind of Star Wars teachings and seeing how they're applied in the group?
Well, the as stated many times on this podcast, you are kind of the Jedi Order guy, so you kind of have a better knowledge of the background of what Jedis go through in their training, or what sort of lessons could be pulled from the stories to apply to this. So for me, everything that we do was kind of new. I did Taekwondo for all of like 6 months, and all I got out of that was learning how to speak to 10 or count to 10 in Korean and getting hit with a kendo stick when that was incorrect. Luckily, that doesn't happen in this school just yet.
We're getting a signal from our instructor going that might happen soon.
I've seen those stick fighting sticks, and they look way more painful than a kendo stick. Kendo sticks are just loud.
Oof.
Very cool. Very cool. So, since kind of beginning this journey with the San Diego Sabers and kind of looking at the Saber community in general, I've had people kind of ask, there's nothing near me, what can I do to fix that? And so we kind of went over that with Steve in terms of, how people can find groups near them and sort of that sort of thing. But coming from the other side of that is, there might be somebody out there who has martial arts experience like yourself who's thinking about starting a school of their own. So if there are those people out there, what advice would you give them?
Find a team that you can trust and that are good at things that you are not. So essentially find your Steve and find your Robert, and make sure that everyone knows what their role and responsibility is and is committed to executing it. And once you have a good leadership, people will just show up.
Very nice. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It seemed to work for us pretty well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. He knows what he's talking about, folks. At the moment. Well, our listeners have a couple questions.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Our first one comes from Randy.
Hello, Randy.
Randy asks, how do you not die?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I struggle with that every time I pick up a weapon, but it's good because... I'm just kidding. Oh my god.
Kind of maybe going deeper into Randy's question more than he might have intended. Randy. We do take safety measures when fighting and doing combat, so maybe going into that a little bit.
For sure. So we do recommend a minimum set of protective gear, that being a fencing mask for your head and face, because it's kind of hard to replace stuff on there should anything happen to it. Protective gear for your hands, because if you've seen Star Wars, you'll know that tends to be a target very frequently, and it holds true in real life. So we recommend larger lacrosse-style gloves, even some hockey gloves if you don't mind the extra bulk. Really good, solid hand protection, because you obviously need those to perform techniques and wield a weapon effectively. And then after that, we recommend like some kind of chest protection, arm guards, knee guards, shin guards, just stuff like that, and keep yourself safe.
Nick has two questions. One is another eye roller. How does the saber go whoosh?
Well, some of them don't. So essentially, if you have a stunt saber, that is a hilt with just a light in it and no sound effects. So it'll either go whoosh if you swing it really hard, or if you make the sound effect yourself. And then the ones that do go whoosh tend to have some kind of soundboard installed into the hilt itself that has the ability to detect when you're moving the lightsaber. So, I'll turn it on, and then I'll move like my wrist or my arm. It'll do the stuff like that. And those boards used to be very expensive. Now you can get pretty good ones for not that much money. And you can put different sound fonts on there. You can put music and songs on there, which are pretty funny to use during a fight. Pretty much anything you want. Like any sound you can think of, you could turn it into a sound font and put on your lightsaber.
Somebody has a Michael Jackson saber at Sabers, don't they?
That's one of our Battle Proctor Knights, Matthew. I have it on one of mine, too, because he put it on there for me.
Okay, moving on. Nick has another question. Would it be more beneficial to use a dual saber like Darth Maul's or dual sabers individually?
So this comes down to a very interesting topic, I guess is the best way to say that. If we're talking about lore, like in universe or in real life, are the two very different things. Right. In real life, people that are trained with the use of a staff will find a lot of things translate really well, and other things translate horrendously due to the nature of how a saber staff is built. There's a lot of things that you are restricted on with a lightsaber staff that you are not with a regular staff. And so when it comes to the phrasing of which is beneficial or more beneficial, it comes down to the kind of training that you have. That being said, there are a lot of handicaps you are putting on yourself should you choose to use a saber staff against someone who is not. That being said, you can still find success with it. It's just going to be more difficult due to your limited range of motion and movement options and striking options. So it's essentially the expert with the saber staff versus the novice with a single standard. It's like, yeah, it could happen. You're just going to have to work really hard at it and put in a lot more training than most people will have to do with other weapons.
Right. I did a little bit of bow staff training back in the day, and, your hands are going all over that staff, you know, from the top to the bottom to the center, and there's a lot of kind of positions where it's going to touch your back or your arms or your sides. Mm-hmm. So like all of that is taken away with the saber staff because you can't touch you can't touch any of the sabery ends. Indeed,
yes, that's frowned upon.
Yeah, otherwise you're losing limbs.
Indeed.
So. I mean, in universe style, you kind of got the Force to aid you.
Exactly, yeah. That was going to be my next point.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the Force-based physical augmentation that wielders of the weapon are able to do, there's no handicap because, you can use the Force to augment your body and movements to compensate for those handicaps.
Right. All right. Ryan has a couple questions.
Cool.
Ryan asks, which of the fights depicted in the mainline films is the one you think works the best or is the most grounded in
that I've seen in technique, or the most realistic that you'll tend to see?
How about we do both?
Okay. The most realistic that you will tend to see, I believe, like realistically, if you go out looking for it, because most people are inexperienced, it's going to look a lot like Empire Strikes Back Luke versus Vader, where he's just kind of trying stuff, and the other person is either too scared to do anything because of the flailing lightsaber in front of them, or they'll just take them to town and disarm them. I think that's kind of the most common circumstance you'll see in real life. The most true to what it would actually be like in real life. That's a bit difficult to answer because of none of the prequel ones, because that's no.
Yeah. Great to watch.
Yeah.
But no.
Yeah. Honestly, as much as I hate it and how bad it is when you actually look at the choreography, most people would probably be like Rey and Kylo versus the Praetorian Guards. Simply due to the just rawness, like the raw feeling of that fight.
Right.
It was like, and that's probably could go into the first category as well, of people just kind of flailing around.
Sure.
But I guess probably a more realistic to form one would be Kylo being the actual swordplay user versus Finn, the novice in Force Awakens.
Yeah, that was actually the one that came to my mind first. Was the Finn Kylo fight? And
yeah,
even the Finn Rey fight there. I mean, it's a little bit more choreographed, but it's still not like it's not as bonkers as the Praetorian Guard fight, and it's also not as flaily as the Empire Strikes Back one.
Yeah.
Another question Ryan asked is, what modern day weapon training is most useful or translates the best to lightsabering?
That's actually a really good question. I don't think it's either been a really long time since I've answered that, or I don't think I've ever gotten that question before. One of my personal favorite types of real life swords is called a Polish saber.
Okay.
It has a big cup guard. It's a one-handed sword, first of all, and it's got a big cup guard around your knuckles and your hand, and it's got a curved, slender blade. And that's the one I like to train with a lot. Obviously, the blade's not straight, so it's not like a direct correlation. A lot of one-handed style weapons that teach not just thrusting, but cutting as well, would be a good place to start. If you have, like, a studio or a school near you that teaches actual swordplay, a lot of one-handed straight swords or somewhat curved swords would be pretty close, or at least as close as you're going to get without trying to translate techniques back and forth. So I'd recommend, any type of saber, straight or curved. Katanas are good for practicing two-handed lightsaber techniques. If you want to be like Kylo Ren, you could use like long swords, or even like a hand and a half or a bastard sword. Those would probably be where I would tell people to start if you wanted to do like actual swordplay stuff that you could translate some of the stuff over to lightsabers.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Good to know, too, especially if you're some of the listeners who have kind of said, I don't have a school near me yet, or I don't have a saber group. Finding, a real-world martial art to start in would work, and then you might find enough people there to be interested in starting one. Yeah,
and that's a really good point, because the stuff that's the real-world swordplay has been grounded for hundreds of years, and like, if someone is a teacher of it, it's very likely that they, are teaching you the right thing historically, if you've checked them out and they're up to snuff. Whereas with lightsabers, a lot of it is up to translation, and there's not a set, widely agreed upon curriculum or standard, I guess, if you will. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, doing a real-world thing and trying to translate it over would be a good idea.
Yeah, because, we don't have the Force or blasters or actual plasma swords.
Pew-pew.
Or lightning coming out of our hands.
I'm working on that one, but yeah.
Taylor asks, how do the specialty lightsabers compare to the normal ones in terms of training? I know from your prior interview that they expect people to get proficient, if not good level, with basic saber before moving to something more exotic for specialization.
Yeah, that's correct. So when it comes to exotics, what we require at SDS is for you to become proficient with a single standard lightsaber in at least Shicho. So Form 1. And then from there, if you want to branch out into something else, like, we don't consider curved hilts to be exotic, even though they are considered exotic in Universe. Mm-hmm. So a curved hilt will still count as a single standard in SDS. When it comes to Jarkai or Saber Staff, what we require is for you to become proficient in a single standard in both hands. So you're dominant and non-dominant, and once you can prove that consistently, then you're allowed to start training staff or Jarkai.
You mentioned that the dueling sabers, similar to Dooku in SDS, mm-hmm. are not considered to be an exotic.
Correct.
Because he specifically said at the end, like the dueling sabers I like so much.
Yes.
So.
Yes, curved are totally fine to start with. I wouldn't recommend starting with it, but if that's what you want to do, most of it's very easy to compensate for.
This is an interesting in-universe question. I think this one came from Ryan as well. Do lightsabers in universe have weighted beams? Like, does the laser weigh anything? It'd be like swinging around a flashlight otherwise. Make it bottom heavy instead of balanced like a proper blade. These are the things that keep me up at night.
Yeah, yeah, I don't blame you, because that's a really good question. They're not supposed to have weight. So in universe, they're essentially just a blade of energy. And so, yeah, it would be like akin to swinging a flashlight, which is why, until recently, we've seen anyone trying to wield a lightsaber requires an enormous amount of training and practice, because it's so awkward and it's so unique and it's so dangerous. You require years of practice and training to be able to wield something like that effectively, for not just the force aspects of it, but because of what you said. It's weighted very strangely, and it's very easy to mess up when trying to perform a technique like that. So yeah.
Like, anybody could pick up a lightsaber and wave it around.
Correct.
And you could still hurt somebody with it.
It's like anyone could pick up a sword or a gun. Yeah.
But, without that training behind it, you're going to be less effective and a danger to yourself and others.
Correct.
Yeah. The one thing that I kind of always got in my head, I know the blades are supposed to be weightless, but it's also energy that's being generated and in a force field, and that energy causes enough vibration to have, like that, that sound.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, I've always wondered, and it's never been answered, and these are the things that keep me up at night, Lucasfilm, if that energy generation causes any sort of resistance in terms of, like, is it just a smooth motion, or when I swing it, do I get that,
resistance?
Yeah.
I don't think there would be any resistance.
But I don't
know
know
my own
physics.
head canon.
Yeah, exactly.
The blades are made of vibranium. Just energetic vibranium.
You're vibranium.
No noise, allegedly. Vibration.
Even though it clangs when it goes off of things.
That's added for our benefit.
Big oof.
Definitely makes noise.
Yeah.
Just like space.
Just like space.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also a thing.
I think at the end of the day, we overanalyze Star Wars because we love it, but we also need to, at the end of the day, accept things like, yes, noise makes space here. It's not real. Well, that does it for our audience questions. Eric, do you have any questions for us? Seeing as you are the guest on our podcast, and we just subjected you to a pretty grueling interview.
Oh, that wasn't grueling at all. That was fun.
Well, we appreciate that.
Yeah, I could come up with questions all day.
I'm not going anywhere.
For example, Let's see here. Alright, so if there's a dogfight between Luke and an X-Wing and Anakin and a Jedi Starfighter, what planet should they be fighting above, and what situational battle around them will be taking place in your perfect story headcanon fanfiction?
Wow. Okay. That is a lot of moving parts. Well, being over Tatooine would make it very thematic.
Yeah.
And see, I'm having trouble getting over the hurdle of Anakin era Anakin and Luke being in the same.
Who do you think's a better pilot?
Who do I think is a better pilot?
Mm-hmm.
I say Anakin.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Anakin as well.
Yeah, he has way more experience.
Yeah, he's got way more experience.
He won the Boon to Eve Classic. Did Luke?
That was pod racing.
He just murdered animals in his airspeeder. Just flew around killing lion-sized creatures for fun.
Boon to Eve.
Yeah, Anakin's got, he's got more training with the Force, which he can augment his already considerably good piloting skills.
Mm-hmm.
Who has R2?
Anakin has R2's head, and then the body is in that.
The body's in that
little. The body's in that slot.
So
in the
it is
back of
Yavin
Force. Sure.
So Tatooine would make it pretty thematic. Let's say it's alternate universe take where Anakin doesn't betray the Jedi, but Sidious wins anyway and takes control of his kid and makes his kid his right-hand man. So it's going to be old man Anakin facing down his son, Empire v, Rebellion.
Old mannequin.
Old mannequin. Old mannequin. There with Edge Luke.
Oof.
Over Tatooine for some MacGuffin on the ground.
Okay, I'd read it.
Yeah. Yeah.
A map to Leia.
A map to Leia.
Who's gone into hiding because her run for Senate didn't go as well as she thought it was going to.
So that causes her to go.
Well, she got drunk and tweeted out some inappropriate things. And to get away from the media, she's had to run away, and they're both trying to find her.
I'd watch that.
Yeah.
This film, I am for hire.
Fantastic.
That's good stuff.
That was a good question.
Thank you.
That was not what I was expecting whatsoever.
I got them all. I got more. I could come up with a billion of them.
All right. Let's do another one.
All right.
This is fun.
Do you like death battles?
I can do a death battle.
All right. So in this corner, we have Ewoks
Okay.
with Jawa technology.
Okay.
Versus Jawas with sticks and rocks.
Oh, Ewoks.
Ewoks all day.
Ewoks have already shown that they are capable of extreme guerrilla tactics and the ability to instantly pick up and use foreign technology, like riding that speeder bike and not dying, and turning stuff on the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
So Jawas are sand traders who use
barely people,
who use their their tech to salvage droids and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I guess they would prevent attacks from sand people too. But I think in the end, having the tech boost is going to give the Ewoks the edge.
I think they would just use the Jawa tech as additional clubs.
Yeah, sure. I mean, but they're adept with club use, where I don't know if Jawas are adept in club and spear.
We know they're not.
Yeah, there you go. So
fair enough.
That's my
they
take
couldn't
on
even
it.
fight stormtroopers that attack their sandcrawlers.
Stormtroopers.
Stormtroopers.
All right, let's do one more. What do you got for us?
Okay, Yoda, Revenge of the Sith era versus Prime Satil Shan, Grandmaster.
Interesting.
There's a lot of complex things going on in Yoda's time, like brain. Revenge of the Sith.
There are.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, like I realized what's going on. A little bit distracted. Maybe he's got to get away. He had to kill his clone commander. It's good relations with the Ewoks. That's good.
Relations with the Wookiees I have.
Yeah.
what were you doing in your 400s, Yoda, that you have such good relations with the Wookiees?
Regret nothing I do.
Wild times those were. I think I'm gonna go Yoda.
Why?
Just because they've got comparable skill sets, even as far as, the energy absorption and...
Tutuminous.
Yes. And I think Yoda just gets it off of his advantage of time.
His experience? Okay. Yeah, I would agree with you.
Yeah.
I think Satele... Okay, here's the scale. Like, I don't think that Sidious would have lasted as long as he did against Yoda if they were not fighting in such a really awkward space.
Yeah.
I don't think Yoda would have won. I think the fight would have been over a lot faster. I think Yoda would have had a little bit of an easier time, though, if they were not, jumping and flying around everywhere because of his age.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it didn't turn into a platformer. And I don't see Yoda beating Sidious, and I certainly don't see Satele beating Sidious, and I think Yoda has an edge in every aspect except for being in shape. Satele's got that edge, but everything else I think goes to Yoda, just from what we've seen, canon feats, statements, abilities. Just from both. Even though Satele is very strong, I just see Yoda taking it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that. Well, I think that's going to about do it for this episode of Hoth Topics, a podcast about Star Wars. Eric, where can the people find you or SDS Sabers if they are interested?
San Diego Sabers.net is the best place to find San Diego Sabers related stuff, as well as our Facebook page. I believe we have an Instagram as well. A lot of social media. You can find us there. You can find us at the Saber Martial Arts website and Facebook page. You can listen to our podcast. You can come out and train with us. A lot of places.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Excellent. And as always, you can find us here at Hoth Topics at hothtopicspodcast.com. Shoot us an email at hothpod@gmail.com or tweet at us on Zitwitters. At Hothpod. I've been Ian.
I don't got anything clever for this one.
That's been John.
I'm still Eric.
And Eric is still here.
Yes.
Thank you very much, everybody. We will see you next time. John, cue that music.
Okay.